This video is brought to you by NordVPN. On Sunday, Poland held a historic election, pitting the Conservative Law and Justice Party, who've ruled the country for the past 8 years, against former Prime Minister and President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, and his centrist Civic coalition. This marks a culmination of a decades-long power struggle between the two political camps, with this year's campaign being particularly divisive. According to many analysts and commentators, rule of law in Poland has severely deteriorated under its current government, while relations with the EU have been tense to say the least. Donald Tusk is, however, not without his own controversy and facing investigation for alleged abuse of power during his previous tenure as Prime Minister. So in this video, we'll take a look at Sunday's election, why it was so important not just to Poland, but also the EU, and what happens next. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Since 2005, the Polish political landscape has been dominated by the rivalry of two parties: Law and Justice, led by Jarosław Kaczyński, and the Civic Platform under Donald Tusk. Each party draws support from two distinct geographic blocs. The west of the country and large cities consistently vote for Civic Platform, while the east and the countryside backs Law and Justice. Between 2005 and 2007, Law and Justice led its first government, but its rule was cut short by a corruption scandal involving their junior coalition partner, paving the way for early elections. These were decisively won by Donald Tusk, who served as Prime Minister between 2007 and 2014, until resigning to serve as President of the European Council. However, Civic Platform failed to produce a strong candidate to replace Tusk, and was subsequently beaten by Law and Justice in the 2015 election. Ever since, Law and Justice have controlled the government, with Kaczyński serving as de facto leader, despite not being Prime Minister himself. Law and Justice's tenure was marked by a series of spats with the EU over everything from immigration to judicial independence, and the European Commission is currently withholding billions of euros in funds for Poland over its alleged rule of law breaches. Anyway, after failing to unseat Law and Justice in the 2019 election, the Civic Platform faced an internal crisis and saw its polling numbers collapse. To prevent its demise, Donald Tusk decided to return to the forefront of national politics and was duly re-elected as party leader in 2021. Ever since, polling for the Civic Platform and its electoral coalition called the Civic Coalition has improved significantly. The smaller Polish People's Party and Poland 2050 movement formed another centrist coalition called the Third Way ahead of the election, and together with the Social Democratic Left Party, they've made up a wide anti-government bloc, even holding massive rallies together. In order to appeal to more conservative voters, Tusk has attacked migration and even called out the government for allowing uncontrolled migration from Muslim countries. Law and Justice politicians, meanwhile, attacked Tusk for allegedly planning to give up half of the country in case of Russian invasion, after it had published secret defence plans from Tusk's previous government. In addition to this, Tusk faces an investigation for alleged abuse of power after apparently abusing his position to illegally inspect coal traders from Russia. Now, let's get into the results. According to the last exit poll from Ipsos, it looks like the opposition bloc is set to win a solid majority, unseating Law and Justice from power, despite Law and Justice receiving a plurality of votes with 36.6%. Civic Coalition is set to take 31%, Third Way could win 13.5%, while the left would win 8.6%, which would give the opposition bloc 248 seats, which is more than the 231 needed for a majority. This was also a pretty terrible night for the far-right Confederation Party, a potential Law and Justice coalition ally who won just 6.4% of the vote. It's also worth noting that, at least according to exit polls, turnout was the highest it's been since the fall of communism, at about 73%, driven in part by an impressive showing from the 18 to 29-year-olds. So, unless the exit polls are majorly off, we can expect Donald Tusk to become Poland's next Prime Minister, and Kaczyński himself already admitted that he was unsure if Law and Justice's success will be able to be turned into another term in power. This is huge for a number of reasons. For starters, it's likely to improve Poland's relations with Ukraine, given that Tusk criticised the previous government's decision to stop supplying arms to Ukraine after a spat over grain exports. But it's also going to have a massive impact on the EU. Poland, along with Hungary, has been one of the more unruly members of the European Union, and the rest of the EU has struggled to accommodate its growing military and economic heft. This rapid political shift and Tusk's ascent should significantly improve relations between the Polish government and the EU, and Tusk's history as president of the European Council might push Poland to take on a more hands-on leadership position in the Union. It also means that internal reforms advocated by certain EU members like France and Germany ahead of Ukraine's accession are now far more likely. For context, a big part of these reforms would be moving away from unanimity towards what's called qualified majority voting in certain policy areas, including foreign affairs. But Poland and a bunch of other countries have resisted these changes because they don't want to give up their de facto veto. Tusk is likely to be far more responsive to these proposals, and this could have enormous consequences for the EU's internal machinations. Despite this important political shift, things won't be so easy for the new government. First of all, Poland is a semi-presidential republic, with the president having the right to veto any legislation. The president's veto may be overruled by 3/5 of the parliament, a majority that Tusk might not receive. Given the fact that Poland's president Andrzej Duda is a member of Law and Justice, Tusk could face heavy obstruction by the president in key legislative areas, like undoing the previous government's judicial reforms. Another major problem for Tusk is the sheer ideological fragmentation of his future government. Aside from the Civic Coalition, which itself is a mishmash of centre-right liberal, agrarian and green parties, his government will have to include the Christian Democratic Third Way, together with the left. Nonetheless, this is a good result for Tusk and EU unity in what was probably the most important election in Europe for some time, and the various parties' mutual antipathy to Law and Justice may well be enough to see them through. With news like this constantly filling the headlines, it's easy to feel like the world's getting less safe. Fortunately, when it comes to your digital safety, NordVPN has your back. It's an unfortunate reality that online scams and phishing attacks are on the rise, with us constantly bombarded with emails from our banks, social media accounts, and annoying newsletters we forgot we even signed up to. It's easy to click the wrong thing. One weak link can compromise security and bring things crashing down. With the protection of NordVPN though, you can use their threat protection features to identify potential suspicious links. Even if you did reach a suspicious website, NordVPN's data encryption tools would protect against a number of other attacks, like malicious man-in-the-middle breaches. Even if things do go wrong, NordVPN's dark web monitoring is always scanning for your details and passwords, and can actively notify you before you even notice. Plus, if you sign up to a 2-year plan using our link, you'll not only get a massive discount, but you'll also get 4 extra months totally free. We've been told that sometimes when people hear us talk about NordVPN, they open up a new tab and start searching, but they don't use our link. I'm certainly glad that they do use the service, but you only get the discount and you support the channel through that link. So if you're trying to improve our journalism by signing up for Nord, use our link when you do, and you'll get their great service at a discount.